Again, not to gloat about my business, but I happen to train a lot of billionaires. It's 4D chess, and you're not even close to playing it because you're still playing checkers. And as an entrepreneur, you should always pay attention when you get bored. And if you don't, you're doing something wrong. What these guys are saying are not what those guys are saying.
Hey, welcome back to Story Loans. Today on the podcast, we have a very special guest. He was the best man at my wedding, a good friend, Tommy Floyd, aka Sensei Tom. Tommy owns and operates a karate school here in Palm Beach, Florida. He's owned it for 15 years, and today he sits down with us to tell his entrepreneurial story. His school specializes in a Russian martial arts called Systema. Let's pop up a clip so you can see what that is if you're watching on YouTube, because it is rather unique.
My movement goes from one to the other. It's very little disconnect. I'm getting hit, I go, oh, here, shoo, oh, boom, boom. See, like, I'm not like here and then there. I'm always kind of like in the middle.
We also have a special guest joining us, so stick around. Without further ado, let's get on with the show. Hi. So today I'm going to be interviewing my best friend. Zach, come on in. Have a seat. Tommy Floyd, thank you for joining us on Story Loans. Nice belt.
Thank you.
So for those who may not know you, why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
My name's Tom Floyd. I own a martial arts and fitness studio in downtown West Palm Beach. I've been teaching martial arts for 20 years. We specialize in teaching children a martial art called Russian Systema. This style is a unique style that came out of Russia not too long ago. It's 25 years or almost 30 years, I think it's been out.
So you were pretty new when you started it.
Yeah.
It was like kind of a new trend.
Definitely in America for sure. It was fresh.
But okay, good. So give us an idea of the size of the business, number of employees, revenue, number of locations, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, I've been in downtown West Palm for 10 years. My business has been running for 15. We have two locations two brick and mortars in downtown West Palm Beach. I also have a Systema Floyd up in Georgia and a Systema Floyd in Orlando. And we're currently going to be opening up one in Pennsylvania. And we have around 750 students. And then we have, 4 independent contractors and about 13 employees. Actually 14. And, we run a pretty tight operation. We have seasons and stuff. So right now we're in the summer season and we have a summer camp that's about 350 students. So like the other half of our clientele base takes a break during the summer. And then we operate differently throughout the fall and winter and spring seasons.
Okay. So let's take it back to the beginning. Why did you decide to start your own business?
I think about that all the time, like why I wanted to do my own thing. And I realized, first of all, I couldn't stand to be told what to do, constantly getting in trouble. I worked a lot of different jobs, construction, food, service, and I just couldn't do it. I can't be told what to do. It was so hard. But I also have a drive to like take accountability for the things I want to do, and the things I mess up on. So I see that now when I look back. But the whole important thing now is like, I like seeing success and taking the blame for it. And I truly like seeing failure and taking the blame for it. And it just happens to be now that I use those like tactics in something called martial arts.
Yeah. So in other words, you want to control your own destiny.
Or at least I believe I have a destiny. So I'd like to think I have some control over it.
But why karate? You could have started a business with the construction, or I heard on your podcast recently for your school that you were cleaning gutters. So why karate?
Because I happen to be good at it. It's not just owning a business too, right? We probably don't need to talk about the product per se today, but if you were to look at the product itself, you do have to have some skill within there, right? To be able to perform what it is you're trying to sell to people. And I have a natural ability to teach and to fight and to, kind of mix the two. So martial arts is like Being a teacher of martial arts is like putting on a show. You have to be able to connect with your audience. The students are there for one particular thing, maybe to learn how to fight, maybe how to defend themselves, maybe to get stronger or more fit. But how you present that to them is going to be key. It's not necessarily the martial art itself.
But were you concerned at all in the beginning? Because there's a lot of risk in that. You probably start right away. Like, you don't have a paycheck, right? So were you ever concerned it wasn't going to work?
You have like an employee, a business owner, and what I consider an entrepreneur. And depending on how you group these three or how you define them would give you some of these answers, or give you the reason why I'm going to give you the definition for these answers. If you are a true entrepreneur, you should have almost no fear whatsoever when you go to choose to do something. Because if you have fear, then that means you don't have the right outlook on failure. So if I jump into something, whether it's going to fail or not, I don't care. I'm going right into it. And then when I fail, I learn a lot. When I succeed, I learn a lot more. So I never was scared about doing any of this. I spent my last $20 on a calendar just so I can write out my schedule on one school with 3 students, just so I felt important. And that one calendar turned into, 45 different schools and 750 students. I spent my last dollar to do it, and I didn't think twice about it. So that ability to not feel fear has kept my motivation and my momentum going. And so I think one of the important things in business or learning business is about who you surround yourself around. And I just happen to be, there's a good little bit of luck that the clientele that I fell into happened to be, Palm Beach Island, one of the wealthiest places in the world. And those guys and women who run these types of businesses, where they're the titans of business, you start to see that momentum, motivation, and freedom are their skill sets. It's not what they're selling. It's not what they're doing. It's like a feeling. And if you've ever been around somebody like that, when you start to see, wait, it's not the decisions they're making that make them so powerful. There's these hidden senses and these hidden tricks that they have within themselves that make them bigger than life.
So what was like the hardest hump to get over, like when you're looking back? Because like you said, there was a point where you spent your last dollar, you've got at some point employees, you have payroll. Was there a moment where you were like, oh crap?
No, I don't think there's a moment of oh crap. I think my speed bumps are, how do I get bigger? How do I get better? Like, how do I progress? How do I grow? That's always my speed bump. I don't think I've ever had like a backward speed bump. And I think it's because, when you're constantly looking forward, you really don't have time to look backwards and kind of like, oh crap, here comes this, or what's my biggest issue? So I don't even consider them issues. If we, recently when we opened up one of our second brick and mortar locations, the overhead for everything was a little larger than our income. But if I look at it now, based on your question, I could be like, oh, how was I going to make that? I didn't even calculate it.
Did you have a plan when you were doing that?
My overall business plan comes from a statement from Tony Robbins, where if you want to take the island, you got to burn the boats. And I take that really seriously, because if I came up with an idea that I believe will work and it's calculated based on everything I have going on, I got to make it work. So I go with it. So yes, I understand there might be a numbers, dilemma there, but at the same time, if I know what's going on in my business just in a general sense, and I plug and play and put something in, like a new building, I'm going to go with it. It doesn't mean I don't know the numbers, and it doesn't mean I'm stupid. I'm just like, oh, I have no money, I'm just going to do this anyways. But there's a bigger viewpoint on it, and it's called momentum, right? Like, I'm going to go, and if that opportunity presented itself, it's most likely because I'm in a position to accept it. Most opportunities don't present themselves in business unless you're in the position to actually make a decision on it.
So when did when did this develop into a business? Like, how did it start? Because like in the beginning, are you just like, hey, can I train your kid for some karate and you'll pay me money? Like, how did it actually start?
When is any business considered a business, right? And I think when you talk to somebody who's willing to start something, whether they have something to sell or something to show or something to teach or something to feed you, a business is an idea that could just make money. An entrepreneur creates a small business that doesn't just make money, it gives people a purpose. So like when you start adding when you start adding employees, you start developing a new situation to your business. It's become now something larger than that. So when you ask like, when did you start, when did it become a business? It became a business the day I thought about it. But when did it become a small business? When did it become an entity? Is when I started hiring people, realizing that instead of growing this because I wanted the money or because I needed to live better, I found a level where I could live at, and then all of a sudden translate that into other people who needed a purpose and other people that needed a new style of living, and they had to have a source. And that source was teaching martial arts or teaching children or training people. So it went from business, hey, let me help myself survive and let me help grow a little bit, to let me help people around me grow and have a purpose, into this, small entity.
Well, I want to stay in that beginning kind of phase, because, when you're pushing forward with the momentum, like you say, it's also good to reflect back. And I know you're a man of reflection. So looking in that first year, when you were really figuring things out, were there any mistakes that you made that we can learn from in terms of how you handled your business, how you dealt with your customers, how you did marketing, how you anything?
Yeah, I do a lot of self-reflection. I'm a guy who meditates. I pray. I'm very religious. I'm very spiritual. And if I look at my younger self back then, if there was anything I could have fixed, there's a statement in martial arts. It's not the style, it's the practitioner. And what that kind of means is that the level at which you pay attention to yourself and you grow inside yourself is going to easily reflect out into your business. Just like your business, a reflection of how well your business is doing is open up your bank account, because the money will be a reflection of the market and what your business is doing. Direct correlation. It's a very good unit of measurement. So when I look back at myself back then, what would I have done different? I would have partied less. I would have drank less. I would have done a lot more meditating. I would have went to church more. I would have done more studying. Now, I did do a lot of it, obviously, because I am where I am today. But if there was something I had to fix, it was get on the right path as a person sooner, and I would have done better rather than later, So as I look at that, I go, okay, when I fall off the path now, jump right back on it, because the stronger you're on that path, of self-growth, your business is going to compound growth. So I see that now, I see that in myself when I'm like, wow, it's basic stuff. If you're sleeping better, eating better, working out a little bit, just the basic stuff. I'm not even talking about taking that stuff to like a master level. Your business will grow. So the correlation between self-development, internal self-development, and your business go hand in hand.
Well, this is a perfect time to turn to Zach here.
Of course.
Zach, as you're hearing this, what are you thinking? What question do you want to ask Tommy?
Well, you talked about expansion. I think when you start expanding, do you get worried that your name is the stem of Floyd? You won't be able to check in on those people, your help? Are you worried about that? That maybe your business model might fall off a little bit?
Good question.
Yeah. See, the second we talk about expansion and growth, it is a hard subject to add then in human emotional traits, because if you're on a path to expansion and growth, there's no room for those things. There shouldn't be. Now, consciousness and awareness of what you're doing is one thing, but fear, excitement, nervousness, like these things, if you're going to grow to a bigger level, those things need to either have a check on them, or if not, be non-existent. So how do I take that and correlate it to martial arts? The first thing you do is you don't teach somebody how to block a punch. You show them how scared they are of a punch first. So the most important thing is not that they don't know how to block it. It's just that they can't even function because the fear is so overwhelming. They'll never, even if I teach them a block, they'll never be able to do it. You have to overcome your fear first. The lack of fear gives you the ability to block. So in expansion and growth in business, I would tell any growth. And when I do mentor people in business and stuff like that, I look at their emotional states first. Well, if I do this, Tommy, would this happen? And then what would that happen? And I have a family and I have to do that. So you want to overcome this stuff first. You can't have that. So I don't worry about what will happen to my business name if I'm growing in Georgia or Pennsylvania. I have caution and I have awareness of the situation, but there is no, you figure it out as you go along. So whatever gets messed up in that situation, in the growth, you get rid of that, you keep going. You get rid of that, you keep going. You don't not make a step because of or just in case. You make the step, and then when the mistake happens, you fix it as you're still moving.
But to Zach's point, and it's the same thing in my business, your business was, the foundation was built on, and your success really started with the way you handle the kids and handle the parents, right? And so parents come and pick their kids up from class, you build some dialogue with them, right? And that is how your business started and grew. And then over time, you have different instructors, and you're being more removed from that end client. So does that impact the success of the business? I think is kind of like what Zach's talking about.
Yeah, sure. In a way, what I was realizing, what I had to offer to people and how people took to me, was turned into a business. Yeah.
Because most karate schools are like the instructor, there's a studio. They rarely ever expand to this level.
Right. It's not because of the martial arts or whatever. It's because of the box that a person has put themselves in. If they have just developed a business only and they want to take care of themselves and to a certain level, and that's the extent of their consciousness, let's say, then that's all they're going to do and they'll be fine. See, if you are working on self-development and constantly expanding in yourself and breaking the barriers within yourself, you will see that these other things, expanding the business, just happens to be a correlation to the growth happening inside of you. Those two things go hand in hand. They run parallel. Internal self-development and business in certain levels. You listen to people like Mark Cuban and Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn, and you see a lot of these guys that do self-development and built a business at the same time. I forget the guy who started Herbalife. He was a student of Jim Rohn. And all of these guys, you hear them working on themselves constantly, and their business being a reflection of that. So yes, in the beginning, you have the product, you have this ability, and you turn it into something, and you're like, this is awesome. I'm making money. I don't have to work for somebody. And then that gets boring. And as an entrepreneur, you should always pay attention when you get bored. And if you don't, you're doing something wrong. Because when you reach that level of boredom, you've now reached the end of the line to where change needs to happen. And that's super important to know. But if you don't get bored, or if you don't get tired of what you're doing, and if you don't start not enjoying that area, you won't change.
When I think of business, I think of suppliers, I think of marketing, I think of a P&L and a balance sheet. You're not talking about any of that stuff. You're like talking about the mental aspect of it more than anything.
Can I tell you something cool? Because okay, so I must be saying something. I'm getting my point across. I'm not saying you agree or whatever, but you're seeing my point. Again, not to gloat about my business, but I happen to train a lot of billionaires, a lot of guys who are the heads of some of the biggest companies in the world. I can't say their names, but I do travel with them. I spend a lot of time with them. And all I can tell you is that all of them, what they all have in common, I train about 7 billionaires that are really high up in business. Like, as far as I know, they don't know each other, but they all have something in common. They don't look at business the way that some of my clients who are 100 millionaires or even 50 and below millionaires, they see it so different. It is so astronomically different. And when they look at themselves, the mental game that they play is absolutely insane. It's 4D chess, and you're not even close to playing it because you're still playing checkers. So you're like, where's my balance sheet? Where's my P&L? Let me check. Let me have my CPA look at this. Oh, do I have enough debt to income? Like, you're looking at everything by the book. These guys are thinking about the book that they're going to write based on not needing a book. And it is truly incredible stuff. But you wouldn't see this because part of life is about putting yourself around the right people. It's not about knowing the answer. We all know this. YouTube and everything's so big now, so you start hearing all the same motivational stuff. But if you do put yourself around the people like that, you don't have to know what they know. You just have to witness and start paying attention and going, what these guys are saying are not what those guys are saying. And then you start listening. And it's like, wow, this is pretty incredible. I traveled on this yacht. It was 365 feet. And the owner, I traveled on it for 2 months. And the owner was an incredible guy. I spent 24/7 with this guy every day on his jets, on his helicopter, you name it, I was with him. And I was sitting there with him one day. He was riding a Peloton. And I said to the guy, I can't say his name, but it's like, hey, we'll just call him Jay. He's like, Jay, how'd you do this? How'd you do all this? Like, how are you this successful?
Jay is in
I can't.
Donald
No, not Donald J.
You said Palm Beach.
And I said to him, did you plan all this? You got boats, you got planes. I mean, we go to island, anywhere you want to go. You got it. You just buy whatever you want. And he goes, Tommy, I have 4 assistants. And if I didn't have those 4 assistants, I wouldn't have any of this. Now, at first, a little bit of a joke, right? Like, he's giving a little credit to his assistants. And I kind of let it go over my head. Clearly, he didn't want to talk more about it. At the end of this trip goes by where we land in New Jersey and we're sitting on the plane and I have a few minutes with them because like the tarmac, we're waiting for whatever. And so I'm sitting next to him. I said, okay, I got to I'm an entrepreneur. And I said, I really would love the advice on like how to grow and how to do this bigger and better. I said, so really, what is it? Like, did you just dream about it when you were little? Like, is that how, you went about this? He said, Tommy, I'll tell you exactly what it was. I never stopped and I always kept pushing forward for sure. And he goes, and when I told you I had 4 assistants, I wasn't kidding because there's no way I could handle all the pressure and the movement that it takes to do in a business without people taking it on for me. So when I sat back and I looked at it, I said, this guy's not talking about balance sheets. He's not talking about income. He's not talking about all of this other stuff, where to buy his products. He was saying how to divvy up pressure, the thing that will stop you from your momentum, the thing that will stop you from your progress, pressure. If you don't get that off your shoulders, you will never get to the point where I am. It's not that he couldn't handle the pressure. He knew how to divvy it up and then keep his momentum going. And then you look on the news and you see somebody like Donald Trump, who's got enormous amounts of pressure on his shoulders. And what is the actual statement he says? He says, I've known many great men who could have been amazing if they could have handled the pressure. So what is he talking about? He's not talking about guys who had a better business plan. Like, if you had a better product, you would have been famous. No, he's saying there's something else here in business that most guys can't overcome. Pressure to keep up your momentum, to keep up your growth.
I agree with you 100%. You also need some of the basics. Like, I think you have just good instincts for the business, but you have to have some sort of direction, whether you learn it by the book or you just have the instincts. So for folks listening that might be looking to get involved in like a training business, whether it's dance, gymnastics, karate, what are some of the keys to success to running that type of business?
Start. I tell this to everybody. Stop thinking about it and start. Well, where do I start? You start with one student. Well, how do I get one? Ask somebody in your family. Have your family member say something good about you to somebody else. Start as close as you can. Start with one and start right away. Don't overthink it and don't try to plan it too much. Plenty of good dreams and good ideas die in the planning stages and die in your mind. And you don't want to be that person. You need to start right away. Doesn't matter if you have the uniform. Doesn't matter if you have the location. Doesn't matter. None of that matters. You can teach one student in a park. You can teach one student at their house. You need to start with one. It always starts with the first step, and you have to take that step.
I just have a question because I'm curious. Who do you consider is like your customer? Like, is it the student or like their parent, since a lot of these kids are younger?
That's been a very good question, the customer. And it's a hard question to answer because everybody's a customer, even the people that don't pay. And what I mean by that is, you know, I used to pride myself on not advertising at all. I must have had 300 people in the beginning and didn't advertise ever. It was always word of mouth. And, you know, I just took what I could get, which means anybody walked through that door, we signed you up. And in martial arts, that can be dangerous because, you know, you could have some really serious MMA guys or, you know, brawlers just coming in because they want to fight you. And you go, yeah, sure, sign the contract, let's go. Now you got to fight all day. But when it comes to analyzing or knowing who my customer was, now, where I'm at now, so if we're talking about basic to more advanced, I'll talk about advanced first, I'll go back to basic. Anybody that's willing to give me their attention is my customer. So you have window shoppers, you have people like that heard of something, so you pique their interest. So I realized all the people walking around are potential customers, as long as they're willing to pay with their attention. So what I started doing was becoming more attractive or more catchy just in the way I talk and move, and it just might catch somebody. So I now consider everyone. Now paying customers, we keep them and we utilize them in a way where we give them what they want without knowing they wanted it. But that's another topic for another day. But in the beginning, you know, you have to be very strategic about it. Okay, I'm really good with kids, so where am I going to teach? I'm going to teach in a school. And then, okay, now what grades am I good at? So I'm good with like little kids. Preschoolers are really easy. You just say hi and you look happy. They want to be around you. First and second graders, you have to talk a little bit and you can't scare them. You say one wrong thing, they're going to run away from you. Then third, fourth graders, they're too cool for you. But if you make it fun and you're not too much like a mom or dad, they'll stay with you. And then, you know, 6 and above, forget it. If you didn't beat somebody up in front of them, they're not going to think you're cool and they're not even going to talk to you. So yeah, I know my clientele in the beginning and how I used it. If you ask me now, I don't even think about it, not even a little bit. And people just come to you because they're drawn to you. And I have a very large portion of my following is probably because of that. And the other large is because all my employees are on those other levels. So they come to them because, oh, I know how to handle this age group. I know how to handle that age group.
Okay. So yeah, so I mean, you seem to know the customers very well and what you're dealing with and have put a lot of thought into it. Because a lot of people will just take anyone they can get who's willing to give their money.
It's a really good statement. You put a lot of thought into it, but don't take the credit away on how much thought I took out of it. So because you're telling me, right? You look at something, you analyze it, you know it. I put so much time into getting rid of everything I've known. And that is what I believe has made me successful up until this point. Now, I'm nowhere near the clients that I train, but I want to be like them in that level at where I'm at. So in order to do that, I have to get rid of all these other thought processes I had in the beginning because those were lower level thought processes in order to grow to those levels. I don't want to be the salesman at the bottom. I want to be the owner that started the company. And these guys on this grand scale have thought and learned and done things that are so hard to comprehend. But what it takes is getting rid of stuff in your brain. That's the trick, not knowing more, getting rid of more is important.
Well, if you're on this path and you have this momentum and you're building and trying to do all this reflection and mental work, and then something happens like COVID where, you know, it doesn't matter what your plan was, like there's a new plan now. How did that impact your business and how'd you deal with that?
If you've heard the term in business, pivoting, that is so important. See, again, you have to see through experience, you start to realize that emotion does you no good in business. Now, the awareness of emotion can drive you in good directions, but being emotional is going to destroy you. So when COVID happened, because I was surrounded by good people, I was able to turn my emotion of losing all the ability to keep my school running and turn that into creativity. So what did we do? I opened up an online platform. I was one of the first online platforms for kids in West Palm Beach, for sure. I don't know about the rest of the country, and I don't care because we made a killing on the online platform. I'd never done it in my life, had no idea what I was doing. I turned on a camera, FaceTimed all my clients, and a bunch of little cash signs came in from our payment processing unit. An online streaming service came to me and asked me if they could film 12 programs from me. That was all within a month of each other. The online program came here, asked me to do something. They gave me a check for like $30,000 to just film me for 12 sessions, which each session was 30 minutes. And then they sold my sessions. And at the time, I didn't care if I was going to get, royalties or stuff from that because it was COVID. I just wanted to make sure I was keep piling on the cash to make sure I had cash reserves for me and my, at that time, 5 employees or 6 employees. So hard times, the hardest time, COVID, put a lot of tests because a lot of martial arts schools in my area went down, a lot, which showed you how fragile businesses are. Businesses are super fragile because they're built on emotion. I have this great idea. I'm the best martial artist in the world. I can do it. My parents told me I could do it. The bank told me I could do it. The problem is, did you ever really listen to yourself? Could you do it? You don't know because all these other voices are around you telling you how great you are. When you're alone, you'll know how great you are by the conversation you have in your head. But hard times show true, bravery and courage and strength. But yet COVID happened to be one of the best years ever in perspective to what we were making at the time, not compared to what we're making now, of course, and where we were at, where we were going to go. It was a huge jump. I did the PPP loan, but I didn't use it. I didn't need it. So at that time, it was like, we weren't doing half bad, but there was a little degree of worry in there right in the beginning, the unknown. And, but luckily, like I said, I was surrounded by really good business people that were able to tell me, if you're good enough, this will be a great leap for you.
Pivot.
So as you're thinking of expansion, like the Pennsylvania or Georgia or whatever, like what is the thought process you kind of run through in your brain to try to figure out if it's a good idea?
Biggest problem in a business like mine, teachers, dance, maybe even in SBA lending and stuff like that, is that you find a guy like you who could really sell. And then your biggest problem is, how do you find the next you and make him work under you? I've now realized it was never about the carbon copy of you that mattered. Yeah, it would be nice if I had 2 Tommies, but if I had 2 Tommies, we would never work together. It would never work. That's a problem. So I realized when I'm expanding, I need to make sure that my product is exactly like me wherever I go. It was that, can I motivate the person who's going to work for me enough to make him want to be successful and try and do good? How do I keep that motivation up in somebody to go, hey, look what I'm doing. We could get you to do something similar. We could get you to do better than what you're doing. You can make more money. You could do more with your family. You could do more with your wife or your kids. You can do more than what you're doing. And then you build the whole brand around that one product. So you have to build up the instructor and get them into a place where they're like, I'm going to try and I'm going to do this every day. And I'm going to try and do it better and better and better. Then, of course, we teach them certain little things and certain things to do in a class. Those are all the little things. You have to keep that energy level up. So when I go to these areas, I go in real crazy because I want them to feel that. I want them to feel what I'm coming in, what I'm giving them. So I go to Georgia. He feels my energy. We go from school to school to school. We close deals. We close contracts when I'm there. And I keep that instructor seeing and feeling something they've never felt before. I was just a karate teacher. Why am I talking about contracts with schools? Why am I having meetings with the superintendent or the principal of this school? And that's, they're not used to that. So it's like an excitement of business that they get to feel, but it makes everything feel real.
Looking back at the folks you've motivated as you're growing, do you find that some people just don't have that fire in the belly?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And if I can't light it, I move on to the next person. Everybody is replaceable.
Let's toss it to Zach for a question.
Going back to COVID, things out of our control, right? For us during COVID, like, because we are in the state of Florida, it was great, even though you don't want to say that because, COVID is a terrible thing. What percentage of your entrepreneurship would you say is luck? 5%, 20%, 70%? Where does luck fit into actually seeing a business develop?
It's one thing to say how much of your entrepreneurial spirit is luck. And then it's another thing to say how much of luck have you made your skill. I found out that luck played a huge part. Can't even give it a percentage. It's so big. Part of my life. So when I woke up to that, I decided to make luck one of my skills. So now luck is a tool of mine that I use in business and in expansion and in bad times.
I have a question. So obviously, listening to this interview, you have some skills in business and what you do. How is it that you are so bad at planning, always late to everything, and yet you can build a business? I'm just kidding. You don't have to answer that. So looking back at this 15, 20-year journey, you look back at that whole, film reel of all your highlights. What are some of the memorable moments that stick out to you?
Out of just my whole personal life, no business, no nothing.
Business.
Your
business journey.
Most memorable business moments. I have a few of them. One was, getting the keys to my first building. Another one was I had a man wanted to be business partners, and they offered me $1 million to be my business partner, and I turned it down. That was a memorable situation. Another thing was opening up the second location, and it's a memorable moment, but it happens all the time. Like being able to go to a fundraiser or being able to go to a church that's trying to build or trying to do more for their kids in poor areas. They happen all the time. Those are my most memorable because I always had this thing for helping people. I didn't care what the homeless guy looked like or homeless woman looked like. I didn't care if they asked me on the side of the road, I would give them whatever I had in my pocket. I always had a rule. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what they're asking for, give. And that used to hurt when I was in a place that I always needed money too. It really hurt. I was like, I need this. And now I help churches, I help organizations, and I do things and I help people in certain ways that it doesn't hurt me at all. And I see it in their faces when I do it. And there's so many instances, I guess if I talked about it, it would just seem like my ego going off. But when I'm looking at it in a memorable moment in business, it's that when you are at such a level that you can help somebody and it only helps and it doesn't hurt anybody or anything at the same time, that's a good level to be at. That doesn't mean you have to be at the highest level. It doesn't mean you're at the lowest level. It means you found the right place to start now.
That's awesome. Well, listen, we're going to leave links to all your socials and stuff like that. But before we go, is there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, not really. I'd leave anybody because, I'm doing these business podcasts and stuff now. I would try to leave motivation and momentum for any new business owners or even current business owners. If you're looking to start your own business, stop looking and start. And then if you already have a business, in order to get better, wake up a little bit earlier tomorrow. Eat a little less sugar, go to the gym a little bit longer, and pray a little bit harder. Test it for 2 months and see what happens in your business. Don't even try to touch your business. Don't even try to do anything about it. Test that. Do something about yourself. There's a very good statement that I live by. I'll take care of me for you if you take care of you for me. And that Jim Rohn quote is tremendously important for people in general, that if you take care of yourself, you take the pressure off of others having to do that for you, and then you have the ability to do whatever you want for whoever you want, whenever you want.
The saying that I like is the harder I work, the luckier I am, to Zach's, luck question over there.
Well, I'll tell you, one day you'll be so lucky you won't have to work hard.
This guy. All right. Well, Sensei Tom, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Konnichiwa.
Doitashimashite.